Joining us on the line is Phillip Patrick, precious metal specialist over at Birch Gold Group. Of course, Birch Gold is a sponsor of the show. Phillip, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about the upcoming election. Obviously, if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were to win their economic plan, it looks like it would lead to a certain level of economic stagnation for certain. What do we actually know about their economic plan? She's been pretty vague on them.
She certainly has, and I think it's been by design. She's mostly been talking in vague abstractions about making the economy fair, while floating trial balloons her focus groups have come up with. So it is hard to pin down any cogent policy. We only know, I think, a handful of things. It means more taxes and a whole lot more spending.
So, Phillip, when you look at that spending, what exactly are Kamala Harris's fiscal priorities? I mean, if we keep spending this way, what are the natural sort of impacts of that?
Look, the reality is, from what we can see, her proposal is Bidenomics 2.0. Literally, she's promising to spend $2 for every dollar Biden wanted to spend. We're talking, Biden wanted a $25,000 in down payment assistance for first generation home buyers. Kamala wants it for first generation, or for home buyers, full stop, first time. Biden proposed a $20 billion fund for affordable housing. Kamala wants a $40 billion fund. So, in fact, it's literally Bidenomics 2.0, as if the issue with Bidenomics was that they didn't spend enough. So my question is, why are we targeting successful households rather than reining in spending, right? If we're talking about the tax increases that she's proposed, they would generate about $900 billion over the next 10 years. Debt service payments this year alone are going to cost $950 billion. So I think they're stepping over dollars to pickpocket cents, and I don't think it's going to work.
Phillip, that's a great point. And it's a point that really I think people need to take into account is when Kamala Harris is talking about increasing taxes so as to supposedly lower deficits. The reality is that if you actually were interested in lowering deficits or lowering the national debt, the kind of taxes she's talking about simply would not even make a dent in the kinds of deficit and debt that she's talking about. So what you're really doing is you are pursuing policies that are likely to lead to less economic growth, more economic stagnation, and they're not even going to solve the problem of government revenue.
It's exactly right. And the tax cuts or the tax increases themselves come with consequences. The Tax Foundation said that they would reduce economic output by 2% and could cost 1 million jobs. So the elephant in the room is, why are we not addressing the absurd spending? That's why we're in the position we are.
So, Phillip, obviously I've made clear I'm a big backer of the Trump-Vance ticket. But if Donald Trump and J.D. Vance take the White House in November, what is the economic outlook there?
Look, it's a different proposition. I'd say we're not out of the woods. We've got to remember Biden had added as much to the nation's debt in 4 years as Obama did in 8. But it's a better policy. Broadly speaking, they want to create a business-friendly environment. They want to cut taxes on corporations and not raise income or capital gains. One central aspect, and obviously a controversial one, is tariffs. 20% tariff on all imported goods, 60% tariff on goods from China. Long term, I think these policies are a good idea. It's a strategy to revitalize our manufacturing base, to incentivize the purchase of high quality American made products. But there's no way around it. It does mean, I think, higher prices up front, right? Every Target, every Walmart sells goods made in China. But for me, it's about longer term prospects, shorter term pain for longer term gain. And I don't think we've had a president willing to do that since Reagan. So, we've got a tough storm to weather no matter what. But I think Trump and Vance will set us up for a brighter future for sure.
I'm talking Phillip Patrick, precious metal specialist, Birch Gold Group. So one of the things that's been happening is that global central banks have been buying record quantities of gold. They obviously are not feeling particularly sanguine about the future of growth, because what they're looking at, and I think what everybody's looking at, is if you can't pay off this debt, there's only one way out of that, really. You're not going to be able to tax your way out of that. You're just going to have to inflate. I mean, that's the only way to essentially pay down a debt, is to inflate your dollar. As you say, the debt servicing on the American national debt right now, that's going to outpace, it already outpaces our military budget every year. And it's only going to grow from here.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. It's unsustainable. And by pushing massive spending. We're showing the world that, we're not valuing our US dollar. If I'm a central bank around the world holding dollars, watching the US spending money like it's going out of fashion, it starts to become a problem. And central banks have been hedging dollar exposure using gold. For the last 2.5 years, they've set records for gold purchasing. So central banks around the world are betting against the dollar for the reason that you mentioned. I think there's only one way out of this if we continue down the path of spending. So I think precious metals important for institutions to hedge dollar exposure, but I think important for individuals as well.
Well, folks, obviously we here at Daily Wire have been working with both Birch Gold for a very long time. That's true of my show as well. Text Ben to the number 989898 for your free info kit today to get started with Birch Gold. Again, that's Ben to the number 989898. Phillip, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate the insight.
Thank you.